So hi, I'm Anastasia and I'm a technical designer here at Wix. My job is to build marketing and brand sites for Wix Studio. Previously, I was working in Editor X, and recently my team and we've made a full switch to the Wix Studio. So my experience of switching between the platforms is pretty fresh, and I had to experience this feeling of where should I start from just recently. And the idea of this webinar is coming from that exact feeling. So today I'm going to talk about how to approach site building in Wix Studio. I'm going to talk about how to plan ahead your site structure, make right decisions regarding which tool you should use and when, and how to save some time figuring out what is going on there. Let's take a look at today's agenda. I'm going to split the topic into two main parts. And each one of the parts is going to be about the different approach to the site building. The first one is about how to move your design from somewhere outside of the Wix Studio, any design tool, to the Wix Studio. And here we'll talk about more technical things like layouting and the responsive behavior. And the second part is going to be about how to design right in the Wix Studio. Here we'll take a look on some new and useful things that we have here. And maybe this thing would help you to start your journey in Wix Studio and make your work more efficient. Before we dive deep into the topic, I want to take a couple of minutes for us to align on some concepts that are not so important when you are using the classic Wix editor, but are really crucial when you are building sites in Wix Studio. The first one is responsiveness versus adaptiveness. Classic Wix editor creates adaptive sites, meaning you have a version of your site for desktop and another version of your site for mobile. But there is almost no control of what is going on between those points. Wix Studio is a tool for responsive site creating. It gives you control on how your site looks on at least 3 breakpoints. Have 3 default breakpoints, which is desktop, tablet, and mobile. You also can add up to 6 if you need to. And also you have much more control on what is going on between all between all these points that you have by dragging these handles. You can see the full range of the screen width that you can imagine. And the next concept is cascading. Cascading rule determine how your styles are applied to your elements. Changes that you make on a lower breakpoint are not affecting the changing in the upper breakpoint. For example, if I'm here on the desktop and I'm changing something, I will see those changes in the mobile. But in the mobile, if I'm changing, let's say, the color of this cell, I will not see this change applied on a desktop breakpoint. And another concept is parenting. There is an hierarchy between the elements in the Wix Studio. So let's see this example. Let's say I have 2 elements in my example that are images. For now, they are siblings, and the section that they are sitting in is a parent of both of the images. But what is going on if I'm adding a container and attaching this image to the container? This image is going to change its parent element. For now, this image is a child of its container. Container is a sibling of the second image, and the section is a parent for the container and the image. You can see the hierarchy of the elements in the layers panel. Siblings elements are always sitting on the same line, like here or here. So why is this important? Because reparenting will affect all the breakpoints that you have regardless the cascading rule that we have talked about right now. So let's say I'm going to the mobile and I'm making some kind of reparenting. When I will get back to the desktop, I'll see that this change has applied to the desktop as well. So in case you're doing it unintentionally, it may break your layout. So it is important to be aware of it. And now we are aligned and we are ready to start. In the first part, we'll talk about moving your design from any design program to the editor. We'll talk about how to plan it right and how to choose a tool you need to get a design that is in your mind. So we'll talk about the planning, your site and its structure, about the scale proportionally option, the great tool that we have right now in the Wix Studio, all the rest of the options that we have there. And I'll say some words about the deeper layer that we have in the Wix Studio. It's advanced sizing and CSS grid. Let's start from planning. There are things that you can spot in a place that will make your work more efficient. And you can spot it even before you're starting to build your site in a Wix Studio. And there are 3 questions that you can ask yourself before you're approaching to site building. So the first question is, do I have repeating elements? So I want to show you this example. That's the real design that we have in the Wix Studio community. You can see that I have here 7 cards that are almost identical in terms of design, and they completely identical in terms of layout. So what I could do here, I could build the whole design perfectly on desktop, and then you remember that we have at least 3 breakpoints. I will have to go to tablet and make some adjustment there. Sorry. Make some adjustments in tablet, and then I will have to move to the mobile as well, and make all the adjustments there again and again and again for each one of the cards. So the better way to do it, if you can find all the repeating elements in your site, is to build one of them perfectly all over the breakpoints, from the desktop to the mobile. And once you're done, you'll have just to duplicate them as many times as you need. Another question is, are there any parenting differences between the breakpoints? We have already talked about parenting and that it is impossible to change parenting elements relation between the breakpoints. So looking for those cases will help you consider what solution you'll have to use to solve your case. Maybe adding another element or increasing the size of the parent, or maybe hiding the elements. So here in the example, I have a case where I want to move this image to this cell, but only in mobile. So let's see what one of the ways to deal with it. Here I'm going to mobile, selecting this image and copying it. Now I'm just hiding the container that it sits inside of and adjusting the size of another container that is a parent for this image right now, and just pasting this image into it. This way is really good for that kind of elements, like images or maybe SVGs that are not important for SEO, but you probably won't do it for your titles. So it just keeps that in mind. And probably the most important question that you can ask yourself is, how do you want your design to act responsive? When I say responsive, I mean, what is going on when you are shrinking the screen size, or let's say your browser size? Is everything scaled proportionally? Or maybe you want a section to always take the full height of your screen. Or maybe you want some elements to stay static while the rest of them are shrinking. Once you have an answer to this question, that's the time to start choosing a responsive package and layouting tool for your future site. Deciding on the right responsive behavior is crucial for getting a good end result. For that, in Wix Studio, we have responsive behaviors that you can apply on your elements. We have stretch, fix, scale proportionally, wrap, hug, and also we have more advanced options for you to choose from. It's advanced sizing and CSS grid. Let's jump to the editor and see how do they work. I already have my design here. So before we're starting to talk about the responsiveness, I want to explain how I moved this design from a design tool to the Wix Studio. So the best way to do it is to go to screen size here on the top of my screen that is equal to the artboard with your designing on. Once you're here, you can add your elements from the Add panel. When you add them, you can go to the Inspector panel. And here you have something that may be familiar to you from a design tool you're using. So what you can do is to check the positioning of the same element in your design tool and paste it here. And also you can check the width of the element and the height of the element and enter these values to the relevant input fields. Once you have it for all your elements, you're going to have the most accurate design that you can imagine. So now let's change the screen size and see how the elements are behaving right now. I'm changing it and you can see that everything acts responsive and not only responsive, it's scaled proportionally. It means that my section is acting like an image. So that behavior is not only the default behavior of the elements, it's also one of the responsive behaviors that we can offer you to choose from. We have different responsive behaviors for different elements. Let's say for buttons, we have scaled proportionally, relative with, and fixed. For text, we have more options. We have also wrap and hug. Now, when I'm resizing my screen, I can see that at some point, my paragraph is too small. I cannot use this text. So what I can do, I can choose from another responsive behaviors. Usually for the paragraphs, you will want to use wrap. Let's try it out. Now I'm resizing my screen again. I can see that the font size remains the same. That is good for me. And I can also choose different behaviors for my title. I think the scale proportion for title is good enough. A button, I would like it to be fixed. And for images, we also have a stretched. But I prefer to keep it scale proportionally as it is. And now when I set my responsive behaviors, I can shrink my screen a bit and see that I have this overlapping. So that is exactly the case when you have to manage a relationship between your elements. And I can do it with layouting tools. You can find all of them here in the Add panel. But right now I have a question. Which tool should I choose from? So layouting tools, the main tool that we have here is grid. We have two kinds of them. We have a section grid and CSS grid. We have a flexbox, repeater, stack, and slideshow. And the question is, what is the difference between them and how to choose the one that is right for you? Grid, you will probably use grid when you have some kind of complex layout, even that it's good for simple layouts as well. And also in cases that if you want to achieve more precise sizing and positioning of the elements. Flexbox you will need for special behaviors. repeaters. If you have something you want to connect to a data and make the element, your elements dynamic. Stacks are perfect for creating a relationship between some objects. And slideshow, you can also connect them to data, and they of course, have this slideshow behavior. Now, I'm going to compare between the layouting tools that may seem similar at the first sight, but their purpose are completely different. So let's see more in details. We'll start from section grid and CSS grid. Section grid is a grid that you can see when you are adding a new section to your site. Here is the options that you have as a preset. The tool is very intuitive, so you can just add cells, split them, and you can also drag the cells to create the ratio of them that you need. So you can structure your sections and create really interesting layouts with this tool. For example, this one. You can create this layout in no time with the section grid. Now let's jump back to the editor and see the same design here. That is how the section grid looks. You can add more cells if you want. You can change the size of your gaps from here. And you can also create much more complex layouts with it. So probably the only thing that you cannot do is to perform advanced calculations on each one of the cells or on the whole section. That is the good thing and the bad thing at the same time. The good thing here is that the height of the cell is calculated for you. For example, I'm going to make this text longer. So you can see that my cell is growing together with the content. That means that I will never get to the point when I have some overlapping or cut out elements. But in case you want to take a full control of your grid, you have two ways to do it. The first one is after you've selected the section, you can click on three dots here and go to Advanced Section. Once you did it, you will see more options here in the layout. You will see these columns and row settings. So here you also have much more values that you have used to see in the regular sizing options. And you can also adjust columns and rows from here. And the second way to do it is to apply CSS grid. Let's switch it and see how it looks. So you can see those lines that you also can drag, by the way. But now you can see the actual grid that is sitting beneath the section grid and that the section grid is based on. So in case you are good with CSS or you want to apply some advanced settings on your grid, that is the way for you to do it. Now, the difference between the section grid and the CSS grid, that the section grid you can apply only on sections, as you can understand from the naming. But the CSS grid you can apply also on containers or items of, let's say, a repeater. But when you will have to do it, you'll have to do it when you want to manage a relationship and spacing between some of the elements and not all the elements that you have in your section. And we have talked about the CSS grid in terms of the section structuring, and now we're going to compare CSS grid on smaller things like containers to stack. Let's start from the stack. The stack is a tool that helps you to manage the spacing between the items that are sitting next to each other and they are staying the same all over the breakpoints. You can apply a stack from the floating panel after you selecting all the elements you want to set as a stack. So now you see that I had some overlapping between my elements. And after I'm selecting it, I can just stack them. Let's resize it again, and now you can see that they are not overlapping anymore. Another thing that you can do easily is to change the spacing between the elements by just dragging those handles. And we have two kinds of stacks. We have the vertical one, as you can see here, and we also have the horizontal stack. So the thing that you cannot do with stack is set their height for the vertical stacks or to set their width to the horizontal stacks. And again, it's the same thing as with section grid. It happens because stack is managing the spacing between the items by itself. This tool is going to cover most of the cases you are going to face. But sometimes you want to align some elements that have different height. And in that case, CSS grid comes. By giving separate cells for each element you have in the container, you will set the elements that way. The elements that are inside of the container will not overlap each other exactly as in a stack. But you have to remember that CSS grid is an advanced tool, and in case you have the full vision and full understanding of how you want your design to look, you're good to go. And the next pair of the tools is Repeater and Flexbox. Here in the example, I have a repeater on the left and a Flexbox on the right. They kind of look the same, so what's the difference, you may ask? Even that they look alike, the usage of these tools are completely different. Repeaters are probably familiar to you from the classic Wix editor. So they have the same idea here in the Wix Studio as well. All the items have the same layout. So the most important thing that you can do is connect them to the data and create the layout only for one of the items, and the rest of them are going to get the same layout as the first one. Flexbox, meanwhile, is an advanced tool that you'll need mostly if there is a special behavior in your mind and you're trying to achieve. For example, this one. Here you can see that each one of the icons and words are sitting in its own item. That is something that let us to create this effect inside one of the breakpoints. You can see that the text is wrapping, but I'm not switching between the breakpoints. I'm still in a desktop. So that is one of the cases that Flexbox tool can cover. But we also have more layout presets for the Flexbox. We have columns, we have rows, mosaic, bricks, as you've seen in the previous example. Or maybe you want to create a slider effect, or even add some arrows to help users to navigate between the items of your Flexbox. So if we are already talking about slides, let's see what's the difference between the Flexbox slides to the actual slideshow component that we have in the Wix Studio. While Flexbox items are independent one from another, slideshow items are acting like a repeater. That means that they have the same benefits as the repeater. You can create your layout only once for one of the items, and you also can connect your slideshow to the data. So here in the example, I've connected my slideshow to the data of the blob. You also can set an automatic transition between the items, and you can add those arrows to navigate between them. And also we have an animations for transitions. We have a slide and crossfade animation. That was all the main layouting tools that we have, and the ways to structure your site when you are already have a design in any design program. But what to do if you are designing right in the editor? Here I want to go over the entry points that we have and some smart tools to start designing right in the editor. And I hope that will make your creation more efficient, easy, and fast. Here in this part, we're going to talk also about some content suggestions and, of course, AI. I'm going back to the editor. And here in the Add panel, you can go to the sections. And that's a main entry point if you're starting to build your site from scratch and you have no idea where to start from. All those sections are built that way that you cannot break them in case you are not changing the responsive behavior. Let's say, again, I'm making this text longer and nothing is broken. But make sure you are not changing the responsive behavior, because if you do, you're in control of what is going to happen over the breakpoints. So we have lots of the sections that you can choose from. You can choose from welcome sections, about, services, and so on. We also have some interactive sections, and those are sections that we have already applied some hover or click interactions on them. Here in the containers, you also have some designed containers to start from. You can use them as banners or maybe cards for your site. We also have some hover containers that are also designed and have some hover interactions on them. Also, in the layout tools, you have some presets for the section grids to start from. And you have more layouting tools that are also designed for you. So let's start from adding one of the sections that we have here. And we will custom it a bit. So one of the nicest things that we have here is the content suggestions. Let's say you are building your site with no design and no content. We've already solved the problem of the lack of design, but we still have the lack of content. What I can do, I can just click on one of the elements that I want to generate a content for it. And here in the inspector panel, I can go to the content tab. So I can look for any business idea that I have. In my example, it's beauty salon. So here also I have some, let's say, filters. Here I can choose from the type of the sections that we have. In my case, it is a welcome. And here I should choose the type of the element I want to find the content suggestion for. Here I have a paragraph. So now I have some content suggestions that I can just click on them, and it's updating automatically. We also have the same function for images. So I can click on the image and go to the content suggestions. I'm going to change the image for this one. But also, we have a quick way to get to my uploads. So those are images that I have in my media of the site, and that is much faster way to get to it and just switch the image. So if we are talking about the images, we of course have the AI creation option for the images. Let's try it out. You can find this option in the floating panel. And by clicking on it, it takes you to the screen. So it's pretty intuitive. Here you can describe the image you want and choose a style for your image. So let's look for hairspray bottle, for example. And I think the text shot is good for my case, and I'm just clicking on Create Images. It may take a minute, but at the end, you're getting 4 images to choose from. Let's wait a bit and see what we have here. Okay, so I like this one, and I can click on Choose button. And from here, it takes us to the Wix Photo Studio. You're probably familiar with it, so you have all the options that you have in the Wix Photo Studio, and you can apply some filters or adjust your image, maybe crop it a bit if you need. So once you're done, you can save it. Then the image will appear in your uploads. And now I have a new image here in my site. And the last, but certainly not least, is the responsive AI tool that we have. It can create a layout for smaller breakpoints by applying relevant layouting tools for you. So I have this section that we can try and apply the responsive AI tool on it. But first of all, AI is still AI, and you cannot know what you're going to get as a result. But what you can do is you can give some hints to the AI. So you can place all the elements that are related one to another close one to another, and elements that are not related a bit aside. Also, you can apply some layouting tools. We've talked about stacks, and if you know for sure that you want these 3 elements to sit inside of the stack all over the breakpoints, you can do it, and AI will not ruin the layout you've already created. But the beautiful thing in AI is that it doesn't require you to use any of the layouting tools because it can do it for you. And also, what you can do to affect the result that you can get is to make some minor changes. Sometimes even this small change can affect the result you got. So try to play around and find the best way and the best result that you can get from the AI. Now let's try and run the AI for this section. I'm clicking on the Genie right now, and you can see that all the layouting tools are applied to the section. And you can also see the magic is happening in live. I can apply or discard changes. Let's see what I have here. I'm going to apply the design, and we can change the screen size and see that nothing is broken. And I also can switch between the breakpoints and see that my design is looking good, and it has this stack that you could place by yourself, but you don't need to because it's done for you. Now, when we are done with the site building and layouting, let's talk about utilizing your work. When you have some sections that you've built and you want to reuse them in other pages of your site, or maybe even other sites, we have 3 ways to do it. The first one, you may know from the classic Wix editor, is assets. You can find your assets here in the Add panel. And the way to add it is just to click on 3 dots and save the asset. That's the first way. But we have another way that is similar to this one, but a bit more interesting. So let's do it right now. The second way is saving assets to libraries. Let's name this asset, and let's call it section, for example. And here I can choose where I want to save it. I can choose Save Assets, and it will go to all the assets that we've seen just now. And we also can create a new library or add to one of the libraries that I already own. So let's try and create one of them. I'm going to name it site sections. I'm creating my library, and then I can access all my libraries from here, tools, and I have my libraries here. You can see all of them. And now when I'm opening my library, I can see something interesting. We have a sharing for them. That means that you can add directly one of the Wix users to the library, and then they will get the email with the invitation, or you can just copy a link and send it to them. This way, you can share your libraries with all of your clients or maybe coworkers. And another interesting thing about the libraries is that you can save not only sections or elements, as you can do with regular assets. You can also save your site themes, including typography and colors. That means that you can apply that library on another site, and you will get all the colors and fonts automatically applied to all of your elements in a site. And the last way to reuse your sections is to set them as the global sections. The way to do it is to click on these three dots, and here you have Set as Global. This option is available only for sections, not for the elements. If you want to set some section as a header or footer, this section should be the highest in your site or the lowest for the footer. So this section, I can save it as a section. And once I have it in my global sections, I can use it in all my pages in this site. I can also choose in what pages I'm going to use it. Right now, it's just on the home page, but I have more inner pages, so I can select and apply. And the beautiful thing here is that if I'm doing any change, let's say in my image, I'm going to change it to this one. This change will apply on all of the sections that are saved as global sections. Let's go to another page and see that the change is applied there as well. Here you go. I'm going back to my homepage. Okay, so next thing that is small but really nice and important to use to utilize your work is shortcuts. So first of all, you can find all of the shortcuts that we have here in the Help tab, keyboard shortcuts. So here you have a full list, but I want to talk about a couple of them that are not so obvious. So the first one is the Command or Control if you're using PC. And what it lets us do is to change the behavior of the parent element. Now the default behavior of the editor is this one. Let's say I want to resize my yellow container, and you can see that it affects the positioning of the child of the same container, my image. But what if I just want to increase the side field of this container? What I can do is to click Command, and while I'm holding the Command button, I can resize this container. That is that easy. And this behavior is probably, you're probably familiar to it from all kinds of the design tools, as Figma or Photoshop. So you can get to the behavior also in the Wix Studio Editor. The second shortcut I want to talk about is Escape button. Originally, Escape button is an unselect tool. So now I'm selecting this image and I'm clicking on Escape. So we can see that the image is not selected right now. But another way to use this shortcut is when you're dragging some elements and you want to place them above the containers. You can see right now this attach icon on the top. It is because of the parenting that we have talked about. We can attach some elements to the containers or the sections. But I don't want to commit and place this button inside of the container, because on other breakpoints, I may want to move it to the side of the section. And as you remember, it's not possible with the parenting rule. So what I can do, I can hover over the container and hold the escape button. So now you can see that this attach icon is not there anymore, and I can just leave the button here as is. And you can see that the container is not a parent of this button. And another thing that I wanted to talk about is a great tool that we have here named Copy Design. Sometimes you have designed your section and you love it, but your client maybe wants to make some changes, let's say for your fonts. And here in the section, I have 4 elements with the font, and let's try and change one of them. Now I've made a change, but I have 3 more left. And maybe you will have the cases with more elements to apply the same design on. So what I can do, I can select this element, click on 3 dots, copy design element. You can choose from these breakpoints or all breakpoints. I want to choose this breakpoint for the example. So now you can see my cursor has changed, and now I see this brush icon. You can see that I cannot apply the design of the text to my container, but I certainly can do it on other texts. So to apply it once, I have just to click on one of the texts. But if I want to apply this design on more than one element, I have to hold my Shift button, and I can apply this design easily on as many elements as I want. And lastly, the thing that we have here, and that is something new in Wix Studio, we have add-ons. You can also access them from here, our logo, tools, editor add-ons. So here you have a selection of the tools. The selection is going to grow, but for now, all the tools are free and you can use them freely. Let's try and add one of them. I want to check the get image colors. After I'm clicking on it, I have this add-on installed on my site. So the usage of this particular add-on is really simple. I have just click on one of the images, and it generates me the palette. And click on another one, let's say this one, and I will get another palette. I also have an option to regenerate it if I want, and I can also download the palette and use it for my site colors. So I think that we've covered it all, and the thing that we have talked about today is how to create from the pre-built sections that we have for you, where to find them, and how to use them. We have talked about some smart tools in Wix Studio. We've talked about how to create in Wix Studio when you have a design in other design programs. We've talked about responsive behaviors that we have. We've talked about layouting tools and how to choose the right for you. And also we talked about utilizing your work and libraries, global sections, and shortcuts. So thank you, and Galit, I think that you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. That was so interesting. We're really looking forward to using all those tips. What I do want to remind everybody is that this was an overview and that we have other resources and other tools. and that also there will be other webinars with other focal points. So check those out. Be on the lookout for them. Something else that I want to remind for those of you that joined us a tad late, that the session is being recorded and that you will have access to the recording afterwards. So don't worry about that. Anastasia, I think it's time for us to dive into some of our top questions. What do you think?
Sounds great.
Great. So first question for you is an AI-related question. Is there a limitation on the number of images you can create with AI?
Yes, actually, we do have a limitation, but the number of the creation that you can do with AI is pretty big. So you have 250 creations with 4 options each one. It means that you have 1,000 images to create for free. And I know that in the nearest future, you will also have an option to upgrade to premium if you hit this limitation of 1,000 images.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, next question for you. How can I adjust the section grid between breakpoints if none of the preset options are suitable for me?
For that, I actually want to jump to the editor. And I want to say that the section grid and its presets that we have here are just a starting point and maybe a quick tool to change it for the breakpoints. Because most of the times we're going to use rows in the mobile. Another layouts are rare, but you certainly can achieve another layout on different breakpoints. So what you can do, you can just select your section, and let's say I want to change it here in a tablet. If I don't want to select one of the options that we have here, I still can change my section grid. So I'm going to split this grid, and let's just color it in some other color. And I'm just going back to the desktop to show you that nothing has changed here. Here is my section. So it means that you have the full control of how your grid section is going to look all over the breakpoints. And the cascading rule is working here as well. So you can add your columns and rows and cells, split them, and you can also select some cells and swap between them. And all these changes are not going to apply on the breakpoints that are above the breakpoints you are on right now.
Got it. Okay, let's see. We have time for at least one more question. What about Anastasia migration from the editor to Wix Studio? What do we know? What do you recommend if someone's, for example, started a site already in the editor?
So regarding the migration, we still don't have an exact date on when it's going to happen, when we are going to open this option for users, but it's definitely going to happen. So we should get the migration from Editor X to Studio in the nearest future, and then we're also going to open an option to the migration from the classic Wix to the Wix Studio. So you can wait a bit and you will get this option, and you can also play around in the Wix Studio and see what you can do, because the migration is going to work the same way that it worked until now from the classic Wix to the Editor X. You're mostly going to get all of your data and databases as they are, but it still requires to make some tweaks in the layout.
Well, I think that that's all the time we have for questions for today. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. And for those of you that didn't have your questions answered, because I know there were more, We're going to do our best to answer all of them if we can in the different platforms and communities that we have. Just so that you know, we're adding now to the chat our feedback form, and it's important for us to get your feedback. So please go in and open it and have that so that you don't miss out on the opportunity to give us your impressions. And if you have questions, feel free to go to the new Wix Studio forum or join the Wix Studio Discord community and ask away there. Our product managers will be more than happy to help you out. We have our academy, which is always there as a resource for you to get more information. The recording of this webinar will be uploaded to our academy and our YouTube channel for those of you that were asking about that. And again, that feedback form, go in, open it. Thank you so much again. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Anastasia. And we look forward to seeing and hearing from everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.